He's no longer in government and the diplomatic shackles have long gone. He says the United States' search for a reliable partner in Africa is proving difficult.
The relationship with South Africa ought to be very tight. What are we talking about? We're talking about a genuinely non-racial democracy conducted according to the rule of law and with a modern economy. As a friend of mine at the State Department said, our relations with South Africa ought to be like our relations with Australia, but they're not. The formal relationship is quite edgy. There is lots of offense taken on both sides. And the partnership isn't really there.
But that's not the impression given publicly by both countries in recent years, establishing a strategic partnership that has produced high-level interactions between both governments across a variety of sectors, with the relationship always described as warm, where friends might disagree, but remain friends nonetheless.
Campbell has a different view.
A profound suspicion in the upper reaches of the ANC and the South African Communist Party of American motives based on our perceived support for apartheid and our partnership with the national government in the 1980s, with specific reference to Angola and Namibia.
Long memories.
And how does this translate? Very hard for the American ambassador to see President Zuma.
The discussion on South Africa is part of a series examining countries in transition and in the main attracts investors with interests in the region. Shervin Brycepease, SABC News, New York.
To take the story further, we're joined live in studio by Dr. Scott Fersing, who's Head of International Studies at Monash. A very good evening to you, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, by any standard, South Africa is considered to be one of the most influential countries within the SADC region. How would you characterize the relationship between South Africa and the U.S.?
I would categorize the relationship as good. It's not great. Ambassador Campbell hit on some big issues, and I think the historical aspect that he mentioned is an important one. The U.S. is seen as a sort of a latecomer to supporting the ANC and supporting the end of apartheid, and then a lot of people within the ANC and SACP and others, still remember the U.S. being that latecomer, and then there is some animosity towards the U.S. because of that.
What areas of cooperation do you consider worth forging between the two nations? Well,
there's a strong economic relationship where it was, the U.S. was South Africa's largest trading partner for many years, being overtaken by China. Mm-hmm. And there's been a big push lately by the U.S. government to further doing business in Africa and getting American business. There's over 600 U.S. businesses operating in South Africa, so that's definitely a large component of the relationship. And there's also a strong, I'd say, people-to-people relations between the United States and South Africa. A lot of South Africans attend universities in the States and vice versa, and a lot of big tourists, there's still big tourist numbers coming from Americans visiting South Africa.
What are your views on the current efforts aimed at increasing cooperation in terms of nuclear issues?
Funny enough, I actually just got an email today saying that there's a nuclear delegation going over to the States in about 2 months' time, followed by a visit to China to look at further nuclear cooperation. There has been some hiccups. The Iranian situation, when the U.S. passed a law about putting sanctions on countries that would support our import Iranian oil, was quite a big hiccup in the U.S.-South African relations, but they've seemed to get past that and are on a pretty good note when it comes to nuclear relations.
From where you stand now, what's the relationship between South Africa and the U.S. going forward?
I think the relationship going forward is actually going to increase. There's been a big change in U.S.-African leadership. The current U.S. Head of Africa for the State Department, Johnny Carson, recently retired, so they're looking to fill his position. The U.S. Ambassador Donald Gibbs was a big component of the Obama administration. He's now leaving, and there's a new ambassador coming in soon. A relatively high political figure in Washington. His name is Patrick Gaspard, and he's the executive director of the Democratic Party. So I think that shows the good push or the big emphasis that Obama is putting on U.S.-South African relations. And Obama himself is scheduled to make an African visit sometime in 2013, which was confirmed by Secretary of State John Kerry to Congress a few days ago. No details have been released as of yet, but hopefully we'll know more soon. And hopefully he'll be here in Joburg and Pretoria.
Thank you very much for your insight on South Africa-US relations. That was Dr. Scott Fersing. He's head of international studies at Monash.